Good morning, Ad Hoc. It's another exciting day in the Wellness Challenge, and today we're going to have a walk and talk all about measuring and marking. Measuring and marking is really important because otherwise you don't know where to cut, or you don't know how big a piece you need, all that sort of stuff. And today we are going to have a special on-site, so I'm going to pause the video at some point and then we'll pick back up again when I get to the pavilion here in my neighborhood, because my son is having a Christmas play in a couple of months, a month and a half, something like that. And we need to know how big a stage they have to work with, so that we know how big to make all the props and scenes and everything like that. So we're going to talk about measuring and marking, and I'll see you when I get there. We made it to the pavilion. It is a little hard to see from this angle, but it's a good sized pavilion this way and this way. I'll show you some pictures in the video. There's almost no wood anywhere, so I'm a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but we still have measurements to take, so let's get to it. The tape measure I brought today is this Stanley 30-foot lever lock tape measure. It's got this nice little lock on the back. It means that I can pull the tape out like this and it stays until I hit that lock, and then it retracts like that. This particular tape measure only has measurements in imperial units, that's inches and feet. I do have a tape measure back in my workshop that does millimeters as well, centimeters and millimeters. But here are some things you may not know about tape measure. It's got this little tab at the top there, and it's loose. You can hear it clicking as I move it back and forward. And the reason it is loose is because if you are measuring from the outside, it does not include the measurement of that little foot. That's what they call that tab. So it stays taut while you're holding it and measuring things. So this beam, as an example, is 10 inches. Now if I wanted to measure the inside of the beam, that foot, instead of staying taut, comes in, and then it takes into account the measurement of that foot, and it looks like the beam is about just shy of 9.5 inches on the inside. Alright, so now I'm going to try and measure the whole length of this pavilion, which may be close to 30 feet, but I'm not going to chance it. I'm just going to use some tricks of the trade to figure it out. So I started with putting the foot of the tape measure on the concrete pad down here, and then come on down here to see where we end up at this beam, and we end up at right about 12 feet and 7 inches, but that's a little imprecise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marking pen I've got on my belt loop here, take the lid off, and then mark at 12 feet. And you'll notice, yep, there we go. You'll notice I use an arrow to be more precise about where exactly that 12-foot mark is. And I can even mark on the concrete right there, 12 feet. And then I can come get my tape measure and move it all the way down to this mark. And keep going from there. And just add up the measurements as I go. Alright, I turned the tape measure around and measured from the other end of the pavilion to right here, where I made my 12-foot mark. And as you can see, it comes out to 26.5 inches. So 26.5 plus 12 is a nice and easy 38.5. So now I know exactly how wide this pavilion is. And because I'm not cutting anything, the length of this the whole length of this pavilion, it doesn't matter that it's square, but if I wanted to make sure that it was a nice 90-degree angle, I've got this tool called a framing square that allows me to bring right up to where my mark is and measure that it's a good 90-degree angle on the tape measure all the way across. And that lets me know that it's a pretty straight measurement, which is nice to know. And it's more important when you're cutting wood and you have to get those pieces to fit together. The framing square that I use is just a general framing square. It's a I got it at, I think, Home Depot or Lowe's, I don't remember which. But it has lots of handy little marks on it. These marks across the top are centimeters, so you can line them up with a tape measure or a ruler if you have one, and you'll get 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, etc. They also have these handy dandy scribing lines, and the way that those work is you measure, or you line up where you want to make your mark, and then you put your pen in and you slide along what it is that you're making your mark on, and as long as this this T square at the end of the framing square, as long as that's resting up against a straight flat surface, you can make a nice straight flat line with the scribing pen. So that's just a really handy thing that I like to use. It also will tell you angles, and I'll show you another tool that I have for measuring angles that's even better. But the idea is you place it flat against your square surface like this, and then you pivot along where it says pivot here, and that's a 5-degree angle, and that's a 20-degree angle, and that is a 45-degree angle, so that you know how where your cuts need to go. Another measuring tool that comes in really handy, especially when working on small spaces, is this caliper tool. You'll see it starts out at 0 on the top and on the bottom, and it has these little caliper things at the top and the bottom that adjust depending on what you're trying to measure. So these big ones, they'll measure something between the calipers. So if I come in here and measure this and then look at where the 0 ends up, it's just about a little bit more than 3/4 of an inch, or about 20 millimeters. And then if I wanted to do the same thing with the measuring the inside, I just do like that. You'll see that you get a slightly different measurement because we're measuring more precisely the inside. Alright, now I'm back in my workshop. My battery ran low, so I had to stop recording out at the pavilion before I got a chance to show you everything. But I wanted to show you 2 more tools for measuring and marking. One is the humble straight edge ruler here. This one does have centimeters on it, as well as regular units. And what we can do with this is find the center of a board. This is a trick that I learned a while ago that a lot of people probably don't know, but how to find the center of a board. You can bring your ruler all the way up to the edge here like this and try and figure out what's half of 3 1/4, or you can do what the pros do. You find a spot and you bring it to the next even number. So like I've got one edge on the 2 here and the other edge on the 6 here, and I'm going to make a line about that. So I made a line across like that, and then I come over here and make a straight line across where the top of that other line was. This is hard to do with one hand, but you get the idea. And then we bring the 2 and the 6 in line with that line, and make another line. And now we've got the center of our board, which is, if we measured right about 1 inch and 3/4. So we're just about as good as if we had tried to do the math ourselves. And then the straight edge part of the ruler is really nice for making nice long straight lines. So if I wanted to cut this board in half, I could just do a straight line like that. And what makes this ruler so effective is it's got cork on the back. And the cork allows you to keep the ruler from moving around too much while you're trying to do stuff. You just hold it down with one hand and then draw your line with the other hand, if you had 2 hands to work with, which I don't. And so I'm using a carpenter's pencil here, by the way. And a carpenter's pencil is specially designed for carpentry and woodworking work. It's really easy to sharpen. Just take a knife to the sharp part here anytime you need to sharpen it. And it's flat, so it doesn't roll away while you're working, as opposed to a traditional pencil, which of course is going to want to roll all over the place. Alright, so the other tool I wanted to show you for measuring and marking is this little guy here. This is a measuring and marking gauge, and it is also an angle finder. So it is really helpful for figuring out what angles you're working with. And the way you do that is you put the flat part, just like a framing square there, and then you put your ruler on the line, and then you can tighten this down to lock it in place so that you can replicate that angle anywhere along the board if you want to. And of course you can just pull it up to the camera and see that it's about a 60-degree angle. So there you go. Well, that's all the measuring and marking I've got for you today, and hope some of it was helpful. And keep walking, and I'll see y'all around.